So welcome to another week of Art Saturday, or also known as ArtSat. You know, thank you for joining us and for making time out of your busy schedules. I know it's a Saturday, day of shopping and being with family, but thank you for being here. Today we are on session 4 of Art Saturday, and this program is designed to support professional development for aspiring artists, musicians, and writers between the ages of 15 and 25, and to also provide art educational support to teachers and community art facilitators. And my name is Zipho Zengosi Daile, but you can call me Zipho in short. And I am the curator for these sessions for the whole Art Saturday program, and I will also be hosting these sessions. So far in the program, we've had a very interesting 4 weeks. We've reviewed the work of Penny Whistle player and musician, Aaron Big Voice Jack, Lerole, and the work of poet and ceramic artist Magorela Elizabeth Makahane, as well as last week we screened and discussed a film on Dade Lifi. We'll have a second session on Dade Lifi coming up in September. Hopefully all of you have subscribed to our website and newsletter. If you haven't, maybe you should do this after the session. You can go to artandubuntu trust.org and fill in your information, then you'll be able to get updates on a weekly basis. So we also want to give thanks to everyone who's participated so far, from the speakers, the discussants, and also some of the subjects, I must say, of the films. Before we begin our session, I would like to acknowledge Seipati Bulane Hopa, who is in the room with us today. And happy Women's Day, Mama. And thank you very much for joining us today. As per usual, we will kick off our session by viewing this 25-minute long film. Then immediately afterwards, I will introduce you to our guest discussants and speakers for the day. Lerato Mutau, Lungiswa Joe, and Ayanda Msebenzi. Let's watch the film and hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching, and and for your patience. Just to give you a little bit of a background on these films that we're screening, including this one on Seipati. It forms part of a series titled South African Arts, Past and Present, and it was produced by and directed by Bridget Thompson, who's also in the Zoom right now. Abdul Kadir Ahmed Said, who's also in the Zoom, and the late Dingan Kapa. And the films provide an introduction to understanding the roots of South African aesthetics, and it looks at how a number of artists, musicians, and writers have shaped their artistic practices. So I would like to introduce this little part of our section in the program, where we invite our guests to have a little chat with us. Right now, I would like to give a little short introduction to our guest of honor, Seipati. Seipati does not only make her own clothes. She's also a filmmaker. She's a producer. She's a director and editor, a manager, and she's also a former Secretary General between 2006 and 2013 of the Pan-African Federation for Filmmakers. She joined Direct Cinema, a training course in Wits University in the mid-80s, and she's produced and directed feature films and also for television. Welcome, Mayor. And we have our second guest is the visual artist Lerato Mutau, who is an artist living on Vilakazi Street in Soweto, the historical significance of which has inspired and features in some of her work. She describes embroidery and particularly the act of stitching as an important part of her work, where each stitch is a symbolic journey. Lerato is also featured in lots of exhibitions locally and internationally. And despite a learning barrier of dyslexia, Lerato Mutao obtained a fine arts and teaching diploma in Johannesburg Art Foundation in 1998. Welcome, Lerato. I'm just trying to make sure that these people that I'm calling out.
No, we are here. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Lerato. We also have two discussants, which I will introduce a little bit later. Lungiswa Joe and Ayanda. Is Ayanda there? Ayanda Msebenzi. Ayanda is supposedly beaming all of this live from Isivivana, which is an art center in Kailicha. I don't find him here. Maybe he's there running around. Maybe I should start. Maybe let me not start with you. Let me start with Lerato, since we've been talking about you all the time, and then you can come after Lerato. I would like to say a few words. Lerato, you also live in Soweto on Vilakazi Street, where May also grew up, you know, and you also speak about how Vilakazi has been very influential in your work, or how you draw inspiration from your own neighborhood, right? Is it possible if you could maybe speak a little bit about that, and also if you could maybe just reflect on how maybe your practice of textile and also your embroidery, how you can relate to a lot of what Me was talking about in the film?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lerato Motau, visual artist. I mainly work with fiber and textile, and how Seipati just, you know, talked about heritage and the history of South African. It's like the skill that I'm using, it's one that it's slowly dying, hand embroidery, because everything is going technical, and now you can have your own hand embroidered clothes using a machine. But I did not want this one to die. I remember when I was taught at school, we used to have, they used to call it needlework then. I did not like it. But when I started growing up, I see that, you know, things that we were taught when we were young, they are now becoming helpful for us to use as skills, and also to embark on our journey as African people. That, you know, when I look at the ladies that sometimes I work with, they're from Limpopo, and they do beautiful, amazing work using embroidery. And mine, I always tell it that it's not an, what do you call it? I always say it's more contemporary, because I even put knots at the end of the cotton each and every time when I start, and they always say, no, when you do it traditional, you don't need to do that. But I feel that me using embroidery, it has also gave back meaning to our Zwangal women that have been using embroidery as a skill, and also living out of it. I remember the one lady that I used to speak to, I would go and buy yarn and cottons from her that she comes with from Limpopo. She would say, you know, when I was young and I just had kids and my husband was working as a mine, at the mines, I would make these beautiful doils and also make clothes and embroider them, and people would sell, you know, will buy those, and I would make a living out of it. So yeah, big up to Seipati to, you know, remind us that heritage and the cultures that we have can influence the type of work that we do. I also, because with where I live in Vilakazi Street, there's more people, you know, internationally and even locally. I know before COVID would have different people coming into the street. I remember the last time we had, we call them e-cotton. I don't know how can I say it in English, but they dress differently from us, and they call them. I think one of the legend one. There's one documentary that was playing on TV. They call it. I forgot it. When my daughter, she's not here, she would remind me. And his name is Dondada. And the type of dressing that they do, it's colorful and vibrant. And they would put on a orange shoes and a blue shoe, a pink t-shirt with a green pants. And, it brings up that, at that time, when I was young, when you're wearing those types of clothes, they would call you that you look like Lishangan. But now it's fashionable. And all these fluorescent colors, they're making up huge statement. I even, when I do my artworks, I always say, I need to have such colors in my work. And yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
That's Lerato. Thank you, Lerato. Hang on, because we might get some few more questions from the audience. Also, please don't be shy if you have questions that you'd like to put out there, even to the filmmakers, because they're in the room. Also, Seipati and Lerato. We also have Lungiswa. Maybe you can speak a little bit. Lungiswa is a founder and curator of Ingwala Slow Market. Beautiful name. And she's also a designer who's recently, in the past couple of years, has actually decided to expand her artistry, and she's now playing around with clay or working with clay. But also Lungiswa is a designer. I don't know if you want to be called a designer, but I see you as a designer. And could you also reflect a little bit of what you've learned from Mom Seipati, and also from other elders that you've worked around, because I also know that your work has always been based on African systems and spirituality. Is there something that you'd probably like to share that resonates with you in the film?
Oh my gosh. You guys, my mess. Hi, thank you for having me. I think when I was watching the film, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm at some show. The clothing, how she dresses, how she embodies herself. And then I was thinking to myself, it's a question I wanted to ask her, is that how do we kind of let that translate to the next generation? Because we don't get much women dressing the way that she dressed in our days, because we're more influenced by colonial way of dressing. And I see her way of dressing more beautiful than the clothes that we actually get to buy at the shops. And then also I wanted to find out from her is that sometimes when we dress up in our own African attires, we always dress up because we're going to ceremonies. And I was like, but this could be like an everyday way. This could be a way of living. It is a way of living in the rural areas, but when we come to the city, it's not our everyday way of living. And then I wanted to ask her, how can, with the new generation, translate the way of dressing up on an everyday way, basically? Because it's hard. It's hard with when you see the influencers, what they're posting, and the kind of clothes that we get to see. It's not like the same back in the days. Like back in the days, you would see Umaya Stradwin and see how beautiful she's dressed, and then she's dressed in her own African way, and that inspires you. But we don't get much of that in our day. So that's me. I hope.
Cool, that's very true. And I was telling Lungi actually some few days ago that Seipati reminds me of my own mother, like growing up, who always made her own clothes. We knew like that there's this sodwa that makes all my mom's clothes. She decides which fits she wanted, and she would go and get different material, even traveling. And it's something that was a little bit, it was normal, because even other friends had parents who were like that, then I guess influenced the kids and also other people around. But it's not I guess with our generation, perhaps that has been lost a little bit somewhere. Messi Buddy, would you like to maybe say hi and maybe respond to Lungi's? Maybe she took a water break. Maybe she'll come back now.
I wanted to also to add something, because watching the film, it also reminded me of this film of Wakanda and how our way of dressing, it's sold as a futuristic, but it's been who we are basically. And how do we actually tell the story ourselves that this is who we are? It's not like a future way of African people dressing. This is the past. This is how we've been dressing basically. So when I was watching, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful to watch.
It is not fashion, that is just passing. It's who we are.
Yay!
So Messi Buddy is here, but maybe she's not ready to chat right now. She might be ready later.
Hello.
Hello, Mama.
Okay, hi. I think I was muted. You know, I don't know this thing.
Yeah. Welcome.
Oh, you know what? First of all, I would love to just thank you for what you have done. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Abdul Kadir. I mean, I never even knew that I would try. You know, you'd make me to do something like this. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. You sound beautiful, Mom.
Oh, so I just want to really thank them for this project, because I think this is a beautiful thing that we have right now, but it's also going to be even more important for the future, because we need these kinds of references of things that are done now and how they can inform us going forward. But just coming back to, you know, the African way of living and the African way of dressing up on a daily basis. I think we succumbed, you know, under the pressure of what the dictates were telling us in terms of how we had to how we had to dress up. And it starts with the naming, you know, it starts with religion. So once you fall into that huge cosmology of thought, then obviously you start losing a lot more of yourself. Now, what I did was I had the privilege of not working for a boss or, you know, or a master. So I actually had that freedom all the time of just being who I am in whatever spaces I found myself in. So even when I went to work dressing up like that most of the time, because I had the freedom and the privilege to do that. Now, the problem is that, you know, corporate spaces come with their own designs and definitions of how one should look, how one should dress up. I mean, for instance, if you want to go to court, you can't go to court, you know, and look, you know, and be bearded and all of that, or because then you are not in code, you know, you are not dressing up according to the dress code that is required. Can you still hear me?
Oh, thank God. Sorry about your phone.
Yes, we can hear you. There's somebody else's mic is not muted out there. We can hear them also. But you can go on, Mama. Messi Buddy. I think you must be muted now. You've just been muted, Miss Seipati. Maybe you
Okay.
can unmute. Yes.
Okay, so
Welcome.
you can hear me
Yes.
now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, please tell me if you can't hear me, because I was running, I was on a marathon, and now suddenly I felt like, you know, I've lost people, or people have lost me. But what I'm saying is that, you know, the thing is that we have to get ourselves back as Africans. We need to find our own destination, and we can only find it by an evocation of our identities again. Because as I say, you know, when you go to work, you know, there are certain demands made on you that you should look like this. But I think looking African is actually very beautiful, because you're just looking yourself, and you are mixing, you know, different worlds, you are putting them together. So I think we need to just inspire this space and up for, you know, for further interrogation, for further dialogue, to say, you know, let people be, let us reassume our identities and put ourselves in those spaces, whether, you know, it's in your courts, whether it's in your churches, you know, at schools. What is it that we can do? Because this is, I think, it will become a powerful movement, not only of design, but of thought as well, where we have renaissance, you know, getting back, you know, a lot of what we have lost. But it doesn't mean that, you know, we are going into, you know, a space where we just put skin, and, you know, you go into a space where you do a celebration, all these diverse, you know, colors that we have accumulated because of the diversity that we have become today, and celebrate that, you know, while putting your Africanness at the center of it. So I think it's just, you know, the inhibitions that we have, and that we feel that you only look good if you dress up this way. But if you don't, then you get compartmentalized, you know, you get put off category, or you become an exclusive. When you wear an African attire, you can only wear it because you are going to a wedding, or, you know, you are going to a heritage day, you know, so it becomes an exclusive. It's not a common denominator that speaks to you as an African, or, you know, that defines you as an African, because the continent is huge. You know, imagine if we just dress, you know, from the south to the north, you know, just imagine the richness of it, you know. Imagine that huge collaboration that we would have, where we exchange, you know, this use of color. Because what I also love about African attire is that it has categories as well. It speaks to your stature as a young girl, it speaks to your stature as a maiden, speaks to your stature as a married woman, you know, speaks to your stature as a matriarch. Even the beads, you know, the way we wear beads, they have a language. When you go to Amandebele, you know, young women would not dress up, you know, similar to married women, or, you know, the gogos. There are levels, and those levels are stories. You know, they are a powerful offerings of storytelling. You know, because even the African attire tells you where you are, you know, in your state, in your life, as a woman or as a man. And we have lost that. You know, we've lost that power of storytelling, even in fashion. Hello?
Well said, Mama. Yes, we're here. We're still here. Thank you so much. I'm very happy that you actually touched on like little like symbolism of the beads and the different types of clothing, and you know, and how clothes can actually or maybe in the past the clothes could tell like a certain status of an individual, whether you were maybe a teen or you're transitioning from boyhood to manhood. You would wear certain clothes, or, you know, or even beads. So I'm very happy that you touched on that. And something else that you touched on was how silly is it that we, in most corporate settings, and not only corporate, but they would look down upon people who dress in what they would deem as traditional clothing, and then come, what is that big day now that is called Friday or something? Now come Heritage Day, and everyone now must come and perform this, tradition and culture. I find it a little bit silly. But anyway, is there anyone who would like to maybe speak up? Pindile is also here. I'm not going to put you on the spot today. You're going to volunteer because you wrote an essay on Seipati. So you're going to volunteer today, right, Pindi?
Hi, madam. I am going to volunteer a little bit later, but I can see that even
Ivan, yes.
Ivan
Okay.
would like to say something. So
Okay, thanks, Pindi. Sorry again. Ivan, hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for the movie, and thanks, Ms. Pat, for allowing your products or your art to excite us. I'm here with a learner from our project. We've got a small homeschooling and adult education project going under our collective Asbue, and the young learners, the young participants in that process had indicated an interest in popularizing African cosmology amongst the youth through the production of fabrics, clothing, and we've done a lot of practical work. We've been making fabrics, and we are moving into clothing, shoes, and accessories. But well, one thing, firstly, just in terms of the film, it would have been great to have seen some of those pictures when you were a 70s Joburg person with your fashion. I'm sure you've got pictures and archive from those days, because I think one of the things when we are talking about contemporary fashion, we forget how long have we been contemporary, from not from the time of being a person purely exposed to, for example, vendor culture, dress, jewelry, and all the things that comes with, to the space where, as you are saying, cosmopolitan exposure to people of other cultures, and the dynamism and the adoption between cultures. Migrant labor with all its, in fact, we cannot qualify it. Migrant labor, although it destroyed us, did expose us to other people as equals, as workers, as residents living in the same space. But what I wanted to say is that perhaps we do need a discourse or a discussion around that. How has our Africanity in the current, by which I mean from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the whole of last century and including this century, how has that developed as a particular style of adornment? And the other thing, because we are trying to be contemporary, and we are working with a designer, a fabric designer, a print specialist, but especially to help us to actualize the young people's desire to speak to cosmology in the current. So my question is not really a question, but just to indicate that you are inspiring us, and we hope to be, not of course, or to be working at your feet in a sense towards this aim of keeping our culture alive. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Ivan. And thank you to your student. You didn't mention the name, or was it me?
Unani, she's sitting here on her own channel, but we watch the movie together. Now it's,
Thank you.
she says it's time for adults to chat. I don't know, but anyway. Sure.
Thank you.
Seipati, I would like to know, when I was watching the video, I could see that most of your outfit has red in them. Is it a statement that you are giving, or you just love the color red?
I
Seipati, you might be muted. Yes, you are muted.
oh me.
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, now I can hear you. Ma'am.
Yes, no, red for me is my best color. Maybe it's because I'm a fire sign, you know, but it always makes me feel alive. Whenever I'm in red, I feel alive. And, and I love blues, I love whites and all yellows, but red just has this, there's this little nuance that it carries, with it for me. But I just wanted to say to Ivan, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes.
Yes. I wanted to say that, that the experience that I've had, which I think it's a bit of an unsettling experience, is that, when we were growing up, there's this cloth that the Basutus love. It's called Sishweshwe. It is a Basutu. It has taken the brand of the Basutu. That's why people call it Sishweshwe, named after the king of the Basutu, King Mushweshwe. So this Shweshwe cloth, every single Basutu woman would have it. This was like a spiritual presence in their lives. I don't even know what to call it, but this was their DNA. It became their DNA. It's something that they adopted. It's something that they adored. It's something that, stamped their identity. So it was a very important cloth to them. But what happened is that when fashion caught up onto that cloth and made it popular and commercialized it, and made it international, the cloth became so expensive that it was almost impossible for any ordinary woman, in any space or place in the Basutu clan or even beyond the Basutu family would access, because now it became so prohibitively expensive. So this is what worries me now, that once a fashion becomes that contemporary and that highly commercialized, then it seems that it transitions into something, a commodity that becomes unbearable in terms of cost. So we take a cloth that defines something that is an identity to a different level of trade and fashion and a different kind of commodity. So you find that now most people now cannot actually afford the dress anymore or the cloth anymore, because when you go to a shop to cut a meter, you have to pay exorbitant amounts of money. So that is also something that we should be looking at as Africans, to say, what is it that we can do to make sure that fashion becomes a lover of every household, that fashion becomes a statement of life, it becomes fun, it becomes a celebration. It's something that is affordable, So I think also one of the things that make us not to go Chinese and wear Chinese clothes or wear, anything that is cheaper than our own, is because we have made our own to be excessively expensive. So, you can't have an art on our wall, because if you go to the market to go and buy it at Rosebank or wherever in Cape Town, it is beyond your affordability. So you get a Chinese whatever on your wall because you can't afford to buy things that are African. So when you were talking about what you were doing, I found it so inspiring, and I'm thinking, what is it that we can do to put more factories, of textiles, so that we can have as much and as many, so that we can actually make them affordable. Make sure that we don't just look at fashion as an exclusive, but fashion becomes everybody's daily bread, because that's what it is in rural areas. They don't even know that they are actually creators of fashion or designers of fashion, because they dress up like that every day. To them, it's they go and work on their fields dressed up beautifully. So what I'm saying is that I'm just saying, conscientiously going forward in this 21st century, what is it that we can do to make every child that is African get access to anything that is African and revel in it because they can afford it? What is it that we can make every family that is African to get anything that they want that is African, that is going to be affordable to them, and revel in its creativity and its aesthetics? Because what I know for sure is that most of the time it becomes extremely expensive for me to even go and get a dress that is, in African print, because it's probably going to be in the 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. So, I'm just saying to business, and to our fashion economy, these are the things that we should be looking at if we want to decentralize the power of fashion in the way that we are seeing it function right now.
So perhaps manufacturing our own prints would be the way to go. Take a little bit of some lessons from the Indonesians. When the Dutch in the 19th century decided to try and steal their designs and sending it back to them, they decided, no way, that's not going to work. We make our own things. And so that's how they failed. And that's how we started buying all these other works prints from them. So perhaps let's look beyond just only consuming or even making clothes, perhaps, and just look at how we can manufacture our own prints. That could be a good way. There's Bridget who has a question. I'm not quite sure who the question is directed to, but we'll hear from her. Bridget, you can unmute yourself. Okay.
Yes, I've unmuted myself and I'm showing my face as well. Hello, everybody. And I'd like to acknowledge all the beautiful intuitive designers. I recognize some on the screen. Of course, Seipati, thank you so much, Seipati. It was so beautiful to be able to record your clothes and to engender this discussion. And I see we also have Lindy and Debela Koka here with a beautiful picture of herself wearing lovely clothes. And Pindile Kaba, a few weeks ago, she showed us with her fantastic turban. And Jane Fursfeld is also an intuitive designer. I'd like to acknowledge all these women who keep the flag flying. And we also have Teresa Gyotza here, who is a teacher of art at Wits University. And the Art and Ubuntu Trust collaborated with her some years ago when she was working with arts and culture teachers. And we had a wonderful workshop together. But my question is really for everybody, and it's maybe for us as a country. Seipati has beautifully outlined how this incredible knowledge has its roots in the rural areas. The question is, has that knowledge entered our curriculums? Are our students who are going to school and to university, are they understanding these color combinations? Are they understanding how to make these colors? Are they understanding the principles in this design. If we are indeed going to produce our own textiles, which I hope we will do, and which we need to for economic purposes, we need artists, designers to be schooled in this incredibly rich heritage. So my question is really an existential question, and it's one of the questions which we at the Art and Ubuntu Trust lobby around. We lobby the Department of Education, we lobby the Department of Arts and Culture. We try to raise this issue because only 5% of South African schools actually provide art for matric. And we have to recognize that the vast majority of learning, if there's any kind of learning happening, is happening in schools. There's less happening that's handed on through generations, although that's the most beautiful form of learning. So our schools' curriculums, first of all, our schools need to offer art for more than 5% of the schools.
Can you check, Bridget, if you did unmute yourself by any mistake, or is it a network connection?
I think I'm still unmuted.
You're fine now.
Hear me? Yeah. So anyway, so it's the question of the schools, that more schools need to offer art, and also the curriculum at schools and at tertiary institutions needs to take account of the vast and rich indigenous knowledge, visual indigenous knowledge that we have, that has to be recorded. Of course, you know, as I was saying, the handing over from generation to generation is really critical, but it also needs to go into the curriculum. It needs to be accessible to all. So, for example, in the way Seipati has so beautifully demonstrated, she can interpret an Ndebele, a Venda, a Shangaan, and she's conversant with all of those looks, with all of those color combinations, with all of those designs. And it's a beautiful richness. And a child in Cape Town, and a child in Thohoyandou, and a child in Willowvale or in Uppington should all have access to all of that in their textbooks, in their teaching, and so on and so forth. That was my sort of comment, question, existential problem. Thank you, bye.
Can I add to that?
Yes, Lungi.
I think it's having to understand African symbols and African language. I think when I was listening to Seipati, when she was speaking about her clothes, and then I realized what we sometimes fail is that I can buy a shweshwe, but I'm not able to and make something beautiful out of it. But to give you a history of shweshwe and like tell you about the women that wear and use that shweshwe, I think we lack so much in that. And then listening to her, I was like, oh wow. That's inspiring to know exactly how a woman would wear shweshwe and where it's based and why it's named the name. And I think, to answer Bridget, I think it's having to go back and understanding and the African symbols, understanding the African language in a way in what we make, basically. So I just wanted to say that.
I think also when we look at the ladies from Limpopo, Mashangane, their colors are beautiful and vibrant. And when we look at the color combination, it really speaks a lot about, textile with color. I think when we go through our textiles and starting to create our own fabrics that could be affordable and people can learn about the history of the people and also afford the material to use and create clothes. We must also look at colors. Colors are wonderful.
Fabric. There's a person behind the fabric. There's a person behind the clothing. That's what I love about Ume listening to her. There's a community. And we need to tell that story. And when we make clothes and when we go design the patterns themselves.
May I contribute? It's Pindile. I'm not too sure.
Hi, Pindi, yes.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted. I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to really thank Seipati for blessing us with the depth of knowledge in terms of really encapsulating all cultures in her presentation of regal way of African outfits, you actually find that her fidelity to African aesthetics is beyond just myopic. Because once you, particularly when I did the review of the film and ended up producing an essay of her intuitiveness in terms of her interpretation of African fashion, and of course, in a way, giving it a contemporary spin, which I will address a little later. I find that even a young person who may not have had an opportunity to have background of rural upbringing, who may have just been brought up in urban areas, as one of our speakers had already said, that this mining economy had displaced a lot of our people from their natural habitat, where dress sense was influenced by a generational hand down of craft, which our ancestry line had handed down to even as young as a young person at the age of 2 would be, toddlers would be sitting around and playing around, playing African games, but they'd be using little pebbles and they'd be watching auntie so-and-so, grandma so-and-so, who in their homestead, family values would be inculcated in them to understand that you can actually do amazing art pieces out of bead designs, which we now refer to as bead designs. But at the time, it was an innate gift that we were given by just our social milieu and our surroundings, which didn't need for us to go to training to display that artistry. But I do want to say that Atubuntu did a fabulous job finding Seipati, because you watch this documentary and walk away thinking, being African is fabulous, absolutely fabulous, regal, elegant, and it can hold its own in the space of fashion. And earlier on, I did actually, and I reluctantly call it fashion, but because we're in contemporary times, any piece of garment that hits one's body is referred to as style, fashion, and all sorts of other names. But I do want to go back to the point that I said I would pick up on later and make reference to some of the designers. And it's only just a handful that I am going to make reference to. But I do know that there are a number of young, conscious influencers who are already doing some of the things that we are discussing, who are already applying themselves in terms of referencing their contemporary garments on the traditional offerings. If you look at a designer like Sonwabile Ndamase, who was propelled to popularity by designing the very relaxed Mandela regal look in a shirt rather than a necktie and a suit for a statesperson. Ndamase runs something on an annual basis. It's awards. It's fashion awards called Vukani Awards. And Vukani Awards encourages young designers fresh out of design schools to use the African aesthetic as a point of reference to produce their collections. And that, for me, says a lot about the kind of treasure people have in their hearts about who they are, where they come from, and the pride they display. Just, if you get an opportunity, I do hope, since we are going through the COVID, social distancing and all of the regulations, I do not know that if, I know for sure that he did not have one last year, and I don't know if he is going to have one this year. But these youngsters, these young designers are anything from teenage years to around the early 20s. And if you can see their pretension, their interpretation and their presentation, you ought to be proud of it. And there's Rich Mnisi that I would like to reference, who recently used Ishibelani as a memory, African memory for producing Ishibelani woven in yarns, about 5 kilometers in, or 5 kilometers in length or some. And this was woven by Tsonga women out in Limpopo. And he then put a Napa leather figure belt around the Shibelani. That Shibelani actually hit the global fashion stages in ways amazing. And actually it sold at 60,000 Rand a piece. Imagine the colors that you were referencing. One of the speakers was referencing about the richness, the depth of the whole that is produced by the Tsonga women out in the Limpopo area. That kind of presentation and color combination that hit the global stages, and within 48 hours, whatever piece he had produced was sold out. And you know what it became? It became a conversation piece, and it also opened up a discourse around how designers can actually use African memory, African aesthetics, to actually produce what is originally theirs. And we are not going to follow in the Steve McQueens of this world, the Guccis of this world, who, by the way, had also done a cultural appropriation for themselves. And I'm not going to go into that tangent because I get very emotional about how our original gifts that have been bestowed upon us, and it's an endowment that we should pass on from generation to generation so that it lives on, has been stolen by others who are using it for commercial purposes. That's why I was so elated and absolutely fulfilled by the fact that Rich Mnisi was able to commercialize what is ours. And I'm just going to mention one last figure who is very young, vibrant, and energetic. Shaw Majosi, who is a rapper, hip hop artist who everywhere he goes in the world, she is donned in the Shibelani, and she, even when she is rapping in Tsonga, and she's giving you an absolute African beat, she then couples that with the Shibelani dance. And she doesn't even shy away from going back to Limpopo and actually recruiting the Shibelani dancers, original Shibelani dancers that she brings on stage to show how proud she is about her Africanness. I mean, just recently when we had the Global Citizen concert at the FNB Stadium, she made history by being a talking point in the media industry everywhere in the world about how fascinating the dance was, how beautiful the dancers were dressed in their shibelani, and how much energy the feet thumping on the stage, the beautiful shibelani dance brought to the stage. And I think there's a wave of youngsters who are absolutely conscious about holding on to whatever they can from learning our languages and ensuring that they speak our languages to each other, dressing in, even though it may not be originally the traditional outfit, but something that has African motif in it. And, you know, I look and relish in how these youngsters have just made it so second nature to go out and find a piece that may have been in their parents' closet and do something with it and look just as regal as, you know, a picture of their parent or grandparent that they have imprinted in their minds. But yes, I do agree that we do need to bring this into the education space, where I do not see how we wouldn't want to show Seipati's, in fact, I'm motivating for it. I do not see how we wouldn't want to show Seipati's a documentary which is produced by Ubuntu in schools. And it doesn't have to be in an art, it doesn't have to be in an art class. It can be in a history class, it can be in an English class. You can ask children to go, learners to go and write an essay about anything they found appealing out of this documentary. And this is how one of the academics I have great respect for, who labors on, who moves away from pedagogy, but labors on andragogy, which allows educators to meet learners where they are and elevate their conscience by putting content in their hands that will enhance their world outlook and grow it. So I really am absolutely grateful to Art Ubuntu for doing the series. I'm very grateful for Seipati for being an outstanding carrier of African beauty, regality, royalty, and just showing pride that you can actually look beautiful and be an antithesis of what has been shoved down our throats. And I think this is the place I need to end it.
Thank you, Pindi. Thank you so much. Looking forward to reading your essay also that you wrote.
That's such a wow. That was such a wow. A big wow to Pindi.
Thank you, Pindile. We will wrap up round about now, but I would like to tell you a little bit about next week's program. Those that don't know yet, or maybe will not subscribe to our newsletter, these sessions are running until October 23. So next weekend, we will be here again but we'll be looking at a film on Ntate Rapetsi Positile, the late Brawili. And we'll start with the screening, and then we'll have a discussion with our guests. So for those that will have time next week or are interested in the work and the life of Ndade Kositile, it would be great if you could join us. Before we leave, also, I would like to call Bridget to just maybe give a little voice of thanks for everyone that's here today.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to start by thanking you, Seipati, very much for both curating the program and also for guiding us through the discussions. We really appreciate it. And Malik in the background, thank you, Malik. Malik, maybe you want to show your picture quickly so we can. And then I'd very much like to thank Seipati. I think everything that's been said today has been very beautifully kind of responding to, there's Malik. There's Malik. Thank you, Malik. He's handling the controls. So Patty, I think that the responses that the film about you and your generous sharing of your intuitive design has really helped us tap into such an important theme of our lives and things that we need to do. So thank you very, very much for participating in the film with us. It's really been wonderful to see the response today. And I want to thank also the people who were involved in making the film. There were many, including Abdul Qadir, the other director, Dingan, who we recognize. Unfortunately, sadly, he passed in 2016. And there were many other people involved in the crew, and I'd like to give a shout out to all of them. And we can never do any of this work without funders. And it's so wonderful to have Lindy here today, Lindy Ndebele Koka, because we often approached her with our begging bowl at the Department of Arts and Culture, and she was always kind and always helpful and always very straightforward with us about what was possible and what wasn't. And it's so nice that she sees value in what we managed to do. And the National Arts Council, who funded this particular program of ArtSat, we're very grateful. It allowed us to make this transition to online work, because just before COVID struck, we were going door to door, well, province to province, showing the films in community art centres and other places. And this is a wonderful way of doing it because the whole country can participate. We even have friends here from England, Hannah and Imru. Thank you for being here with us. And yeah, I think that's everybody who I mustn't forget. I absolutely mustn't forget our trustees. Zubaida was with us earlier and Vusi is with us now, and they always have beautiful things to say and to add, and we couldn't do what we do without them. And all of you, and I can't forget Lungiswa and Lerato, who we met today for the first time. I think Sipho's known you for some time. Thank you so much for your contributions. I hope you'll become part of the discussions and part of this, and others can join you and support you in the struggle, and Ivan as well, in the struggle to keep things going. And absolutely not but brought to the discussion today. And just below you is Jane, who's doing the design of the essays that we're going to put up on our website, and you'll be able to get all of this information from them as well. I think I've remembered everybody. Thank you all for being here today, and we hope to see you next week. Bye.
Thank you everybody. Thanks, Seipati.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Lungi.
Thank you, Seipati. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Pindy. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.